Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar. So glad you can join us. My name is Joe Schrader. On behalf of the OSSA staff, as well as our DPI partners, we want to warmly welcome you and thank you indeed for joining us for this webinar. Today's topic is focused on the ESSER funds, some of you call it. Sometimes I hear people saying the CARES Act funds. So let's just make sure we're all in the same frame here as we work through some acronyms that weren't in our lives until recent months. So again, ESSER, for those keeping score of acronyms at home, stands for the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Grant, which is part of the larger CARES Act, which stands for the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act. So again, what we're going to talk about today, and while we are DPI partners here to help with that, is to really explore more about the ESSER set-aside funds, these new monies. So basically learn what the new free resources are available to each of you in your schools and systems, to find out when they will be available and how you can best access them so they benefit the people you lead and serve back home. So again, that's the approach. Our webinar we expect will be 30 minutes or less, including your questions and answers. So there'll be some presentation here by our DPI partners, then I'll be wrapping up the end, taking your help moderate any questions that are there in the chat line. So please get those into the chat as the session goes through here, and we'll get you on your way before 1:30, we believe. In case you have to step away or if someone you know isn't able to make it live with us today, we are recording the session. We do intend to, as usual, have it posted and available through our website within 24 hours or less. All right, so I think that gets us all caught up to speed and underway. So without further ado, please let me introduce our three facilitators and partners from DPI today. These are wonderful women. They all have been working with us for the past couple of years now in helping to, we hope, help people deal with the growing mental health and resilience challenges. Particularly, they're around anyway, but and we think all the events of the past 6 months just continue to make that even more necessary. So again, we're even more thankful than ever for the good work here and leadership from Beth, Herman, Julie Incitti, and Liz Krubsack of DPI. So welcome, and I'll turn it over to you three.
I think that we could introduce ourselves quickly, and then I am routed to start. So I am Beth Herman, an education consultant with the Department of Public Instruction and the Student Services Prevention and Wellness team.
And I am on Beth's team. I'm Julie Incitti. I'm the school social work consultant and lead on our Trauma Sensitive Schools project.
And I am also on the same team with Julie and Beth. I'm Liz Krubsack. I'm a school mental health consultant.
We are the team known as Julizabeth. Okay, so if you guys could advance, is it Jenna advancing slides, please?
As co-host, I think you can do it too, perhaps. Let's try that. If not, we'll do it.
No.
Okay, we'll do it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So just a little bit about the COVID set-aside funds. As Joe gave you a really great overview of what all those acronyms mean and stuff, essentially these were the COVID-19 relief funds that came to the state agency. The majority of it went directly out to schools. Keep in mind that this includes public and private schools. And then the agency had a percentage that they could hold back to create resources to support the field in these three areas. These were the three key areas that DPI decided to focus on. And the one that we're going to talk to you about today is the expanding and building capacity of school staff to provide mental health services to better support students. The next slide, please. This is mine, right? Julie, Liz? Yes, okay. So when we looked at that particular goal from the agency, we submitted a number of proposals for projects to support student mental health in schools and districts. And this is just 2 slides with tables in there of the different resources. And we're going to give you a little bit more information about each of these so that you have an understanding of what the project actually entails, what it will mean for you, and then how you can access information about it, and roughly a date when it would be available. So the projects we're going to talk to you about today is increasing mental health literacy for adults through the Youth Mental Health First Aid Program, the restorative practices training of trainers and how you can get support in that, peer-to-peer suicide prevention curriculum training, looking at PPE modules to assist your staff in being able to better utilize and appropriately utilize PPE. Next slide, please. Module to help your teams at your schools and your districts better develop your referral pathway. There'll be an online module for that. A toolkit for reducing mental health stigma. We've created a center for resilient schools, which is a regional coaching network to help you implement SEL, school-based mental health, and trauma-sensitive schools. And then building student mental health literacy through a curriculum for all grade levels, elementary, middle, high school. These will be instructional units. Next slide, please.
All right, so I have the chance to talk about some of the work our school nursing consultant has done. She's done an amazing job. And so this personal protective equipment, there is a lot of information currently on our website under this page, COVID information for school health services webpage. I am very excited to let you know that the first module was actually posted already. So understanding COVID-19 mitigation strategies, that module is available currently on the webpage. The basic PPE overview videos are coming shortly by November. I hear they should be up, but even right now there's information for schools just in like PDF form of how to go, you know, of how to do that. So a lot of materials are already available, but that one online module is already available and the other one's coming very shortly.
So the other, one of the big projects is the Wisconsin Center for Resilient Schools. This came out of working with school teams in both school-based mental health, or in all three of us work with teams on implementing trauma-sensitive schools, school-based mental health, social-emotional learning, and recognize that in order to systemically implement it, school teams often need additional support through coaching. And we are in the process of building from the ground up the Center for Resilient Schools. That link will take you to the webpage. It's hosted through the WISH Center, the Wisconsin Safe and Healthy Schools Center. And eventually what will happen is that you will be able to go there and request coaching cycle. We're not quite sure how that's going to look yet. We're working with the RTI Center coaching staff to develop the coaching model to provide coaching to school teams or district teams, public or private, who really want to do some systemic implementation of SEL, school-based mental health, TSS, any combination thereof. We are in the process, as I said, of building this from the ground up, currently hiring 8 coaches and a state coordinator who will provide that across the state, and it will be virtual. And we anticipate that you will be able to begin requesting some type of coaching services by January.
I'm just super excited about that one. I want you all to know that that's going to be a really amazing service, that you could just have a coach come in and work with your team or district and lead you through an aspect of your mental health program and building that up. So definitely be looking for that information in January. That's going to be a pretty awesome service.
And just a heads up, we probably should have, or I should have said this in the beginning, these are all free to you. So all of the services that we're talking about here do not require funding from you in any way. The second one is the third actually is to increase adult mental health literacy and restorative practices. Again, we're working with the Wisconsin Safe and Healthy School Center, the WISH Center, to do this. Some of you are familiar with Youth Mental Health First Aid. These dollars allowed us to expand the number of free trainings that can be offered, and they are virtual. So we are in the process of getting all of our state trainers certified by the National Council for Behavioral Health, which is the agency that actually owns Youth Mental Health First Aid, so that they can provide the training virtually. And it's currently 2 trainers for 20 staff to do the training virtually. This, you will have access to this training. It's free. It includes the materials. You won't need to pay for trainers. And it's structured so that you can begin requesting now, and then we should be able to start providing actual trainings beginning in October. The delay with this is just the materials and preparation things that are not quite ready yet from the National Council. So you have free access to the Youth Mental Health First Aid training for your staff. Please keep in mind, we encourage you to invite community members, families. This isn't just for teachers. This is for anybody who works with adolescents. It's a great one-day, essentially over the course of time, it's a one-day training for all staff to better understand what mental health is and looks like for youth, how to recognize some concerns, how to talk to students about it, and how to help them access help if they need it. The second one is restorative practices. The Wish Center has been providing training in restorative practices, but this allows us to expand the number of folks who can get that training. It also includes a training of trainers in the program, where you would be able to send your own staff members to the TOT so that you can come back and then have your own trainers in the district. So this again would be something that will be available for free. The request for restorative practices training, not the TOT, that has not been set up yet, but request for the training is available now. And that link will take you to the restorative practices page on the Wish Center webpage.
All right, so we're also working on developing 3 instructional units for advancing mental health literacy in our students. So we're developing one for each level, and they're going to be aligned to the national skills-based health education standards, with the idea that this would be a really natural fit for a health class, but also it could be used elsewhere as well. We're doing this because there are just a lot of gaps in mental health literacy curricula that are available across all levels. So we're partnering with the Office of Children's Mental Health to lead this project, and they are working with some of their lived experience partners to guide the development of the instructional units. And once we have those developed, we're also going to pilot the units to test the efficacy of the content in producing the expected outcomes. So those should be available by mid-end of spring. All right, the next piece that we're developing is the Mental Health Referral Pathways online training module. So this expands on our existing work around developing mental health referral pathways. So we already have a guide that's linked here in this slide. And this will really just help to expand on that guide and bring it to life. So help teams who are interested in developing or strengthening referral pathways kind of walk through the steps, explore different tools or processes for strengthening that pathway. So
Liz,
the
I'm
funds
sorry.
are being used to partner with the Wish Center, and they're working with our partner from the National Center for School Mental Health to develop the content for that online training module.
Sorry, Liz, can you just quickly say what a referral pathway is?
Yeah, so the referral pathway is kind of everything that is encompassed in connecting a student to the supports that they need. So a lot of times people think about connecting students to maybe school-based clinicians, but that's just one piece of the referral pathway. It could be just making sure that students get connected to the mental health supports that they need when they need them. Thanks, Julie. The next project is a school stigma reduction toolkit. So we know that mental health stigma is still a huge barrier for students accessing mental health services. So we are partnering with Rogers in Health through the Wish Center to help expand on the work of WISE, which is a statewide initiative to eliminate stigma. So the funds will be used in that collaboration for developing the content, and the content will include tools for school staff to use to help with school staff stigma, as well as to be used with parents and caregivers. We know that's something that folks run into a lot of times, that stigma can keep families from wanting to engage in the mental health system. So the tools will be addressing that, and then also decreasing stigma within the student population as well.
Okay, so the peer-to-peer suicide prevention resources, we do currently have a grant program going on right now. We have actually $250,000 to offer grants of up to $1,000 per high school. And here's the super secret insider information I want you to tell all your friends. This grant was supposed to end on September 30th at midnight. You're supposed to have your application in, but I hear there's a little bit of wiggle room if you or you know, a high school team that you know wants to apply for these funds to get that $1,000. So I highly encourage you to look at it. It's not a very long, involved process to apply for the grant. You could do it fairly quickly. And if you do have questions, you can contact my colleague, Brian Dean, at DPI. And so just really pay attention to that. If you have anything going on with suicide prevention, pretty straightforward to get that funding. Just do so fairly quickly. And then if you actually want to use that funding, you can get additional funding if you're going to implement Hope Squad or Sources of Strength through this expansion program. So if you want this expansion money, you have to apply for the other money first. And then you could get this additional money if you're really implementing the Hope Squad or Sources of Strength. And those are evidence-based programs where we've got students talking to other students, really powerful messaging coming out there. And again, really short grant process. This is not like writing for the collaborative, you know, the school-based mental health collaborative grant where it's going to take you days. This is like, you could get it done this afternoon. Talk to Brian Dean and get some money there for your suicide prevention efforts. And thanks, Beth, for putting Brian Dean's in the chat, his email. Next slide. Great.
So I just wanted to open up the chat again for any questions that might come up. Again, if a few people joined us just a minute or two in, so let me just kind of go back to in case you had missed the opening. So again, in slides 3 and 4, again, Beth and Julie and Liz kind of laid out kind of the framework of this. And so, you know, so really the structure, again, these are some of the areas where there are some efforts through ESSER funds, through the set aside funds to provide more support to you in however you're trying to address these issues of school-based mental health and safety with your students and your families and communities. So again, you saw that's the overall, I'd say, the overview, and then of course the drill down into here. So just to give anybody a chance who might still have a question they're formulating, let me just ask one. I'm particularly going back to this one around, I'm gonna find it here. Yeah, the idea of the coaching support here for the, you know, and I heard the January release of more information and all that sort of thing. But I think sometimes it's just a matter of like, people aren't even sure what coaching support might look like. I think people have a general sense of like, yeah, we got all these needs, but let's just say someone would be so fortunate to get some coaching support in their region through this effort that's, you know, available beginning middle of the year. What are some things that you would envision as experts that might be people for school leaders think like that's a possibility? You could get support around this or that.
So, you know, this also lends itself to the question about how do we also do warm handoffs. So for example, if we've got schools, grantees from the school-based mental health grant, they are clearly working on developing a really good, strong mental health system in their district. So they might be having all these ideas about how to put it all together. They might do all the training. They might have a great plan, and they're still struggling. And so the coaching will take them through. The coaching's not training. It's not technical assistance or consultation. It's actually a coaching process, an inquiry process, where the coach walks them through all the things that they identify what their goals are and helps them get to those goals through a coaching inquiry process. It's tied in pretty deeply to the key system features of a multi-level system of support, an equitable multi-level system of support, but schools are not required to do PBIS or anything to access the system. It might also be something where somebody has done the TSS training modules as a team and they're just not quite sure now how to get it into play and into practice, and they could be coached through that process. It might be somebody that's done the day 1 and day 2 training of SEL and they've got the rubric and they know where they need to focus, but then how do they actually make it happen? It's really systems work and being coached through systems work.
Yeah, very, very helpful. I just love how, again, I see the excitement for this because I share it once I hear that description that you just shared, all those possibilities, and I guess the sorts of supports, because a lot of it's kind of wayfinding. It's just still kind of new terrain for a lot of us. We've been, curriculum and instruction kind of focused people or organizational development, but this is a whole new area of work for a lot of people with really really complex needs, and how do we provide that, right? And so I just really appreciate that. I share the excitement. So Julie, I could feel that pulp, particularly from you earlier in this. I share that now when I hear more about the possibilities that Beth just described, because I think that actually helps bridge, like, I've learned some things, I definitely see a need, but now how does this come together with with a small circle of people moving onward, just really grow this and support our people back home.
Yeah, well, and I'm think about it when I was in a school working on a team, so like working on the trauma sensitive schools team, and we had a lot of good work going on there. We were having support through the modules and through maybe even through our regional CISA, but then our team would still, there just isn't enough funding support out there, even, for the work that the CISAs do around trauma sensitive schools, because you can get support for trauma sensitive schools through your CISA, but this just could provide, if that's really an area you want to dive into, what I'm excited about is the coaching is really like taking this team that's sort of like, you have these meetings, but you just don't get to that goal that you're trying to get to, or you don't even have your goal defined, or you've got a couple different teams and they're working on different pieces of the puzzle, but they're not working well together and they're not aligning things. And this coach can just really make that process clear. It's just having this extra person come in, facilitate discussion, facilitate those alignment conversations, facilitate the goal setting and the visioning, and how does all of that work that you're doing align with your school improvement plan or your overall district strategic plans. I think that I just love the idea of this external person coming in to look at the process you have going on and saying, this is what's working, this isn't working. And then, you're coming up with that on your team is just having the chance to process those questions and conversation together. I think the coaching process brings so much clarity to your work, and it can just feel like a really helpful path forward instead of sort of getting mired in these details and kind of being like, we're having the same conversation over and over again. We're not moving forward with this really important work. And so that's what I'm really excited about the coach for.
Yeah.
And, and given that we're building this, right, I mean, there's still a lot of unknowns, but our goal is essentially that through this coaching process, people will actually be able to systemically implement that, by meaning that it's embedded, it's part of the culture, and it's something that is sustainable, right? So we want these practices to not become something that people do because there's a couple good psychs or social workers or counselors in the building and then they leave and then the whole process disappears. It becomes systematized within everything that you're doing. And then the other piece of this too is that they're not doing the technical assistance and the consultation on the topics. They're focused on the coaching process. Although I can tell you that the people that will be staffing this have all of that background. We just want that focus to be on the coaching. But they will be connected to the DPI staff like us that are here talking to you, as well as the WISH staff that have that content area. So it'll be almost like a wraparound service for school and district teams.
Wonderful. And the people on this webinar are maybe the busiest people in the world right now. They often are anyway, but particularly now, and everything's fluid. So, I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of a principal right now, saying, okay, I'm really interested in this. It's going to be helpful to us. I heard the January thing. How do I make sure that I don't miss when more information is available and that? Well, what would I need to be connected to not miss that release?
We certainly can send it to you, Joe, and then you can make sure that your listservs get it. We're sending things through listservs, and I think the COVID-19 pages have updates.
Yeah.
I also am pretty sure that it will go out in the district administration newsletter that comes from the superintendent's office. And then if you're interested in any of these services, many of them already have website presence. So this center, we've named it the Wisconsin Center for Resilient Schools because we've identified that all of these practices actually serve to build resilience. And if you link on that, you can check that page for updates. We're planning to do sort of updates, let people know where we are in the process. The Youth Mental Health First Aid, you can go on there and actually request something right now. And then you know, some of these other ones, when they start to come online, we'll be sending information out through all of our typical ways of doing that. The school-based mental health and SEL listserv is also a good way. That one pretty much gets almost everything that comes through our team.
Beautiful. Yeah, and thanks so much for making this so so efficient for people, because I think we have 11 slides here and most of them have links about whatever you might be interested in again. And again, here's the overview. So what I heard is, you know, here's some focus areas from the funding. Here are some responses that DPI and partners are doing here. You know, it's kind of a menu of find what you most need and pick, you know, pick something that, but what I hear all this is it's really a goal. I would, you know, you start with like your own needs, your own review of what your needs are, your biggest needs, I would assume, and then trying to, you know, with some sense of like any good planning, some root cause analysis. What do we think is at the root of these biggest needs for us in our own specific context? And then, you know, what goal or two might we have around that? And what I'm thinking is with a good coach connection, they might help you actually think through which of these might make the most sense too, or is that part of the, again, what they might be able to help you if you're even at that most elementary stage of just, all we're doing is just trying to figure out where our needs are right now and then how we might take a step or two forward productively.
Well, and I think there might be some prerequisites. That's one of the things we're talking about, right? So we anticipate we're going to get a fair amount of interest in this. And so we want to make sure that the coaches are actually working with teams who are established that have some administrative support. And I shouldn't even say some, that have administrative support, right? And that even administrators are on the teams. If it's somebody like a couple of staff in a building that are really interested in moving mental health forward, they should consult with us so that we can get them to the point where they'd actually be able to benefit from coaching. So there are some things that kind of need to be set up and in place to move into it. So for example, Joe, when we did the resiliency sessions last year, Academy with USSA last year, some of those teams might really be primed to move into a coaching process.
Appreciate that clarification. I have a question from Dave Schaller from Chippewa Falls, the principal there. He says, since we have an AWARE grant, again, AWARE being an acronym, right, all caps, I'm assuming this information is also communicated through the grant. Just wondering, he's asking if I need to pass on the info shared today.
It's not passed on through AWARE. AWARE is a separate federal grant program. And you, regardless of whether you have the AWARE funds or not, Chippewa Falls would be eligible to access any of these services. I do know you're already accessing youth mental health first aid. And, you know, we have a certain number of trainers, and so we can't train an entire school district for people at this point. We're going to have people, you know, strategically determine groups of people to train. But I would go back and share it, Dave. I'm guessing some of the AWARE folks are on listservs, but I can't guarantee that they have the information.
So as we're wrapping this up, again, we want to make sure we honor our time. We know how precious that is every day, but particularly now. Okay, so I would like to just make sure you're clear on a few things. One is, in fact, let me go back down here. If you, first thing is just the links for the whole slide deck are in our chat. As you can see, again, you can see how you can contact our three presenters today, Beth, Julie, and Liz. So just have that handy as well if you have any follow-up. This is the first of a multi-session series. So I just want to remind you, you've seen this. In fact, if you registered for this event, you probably have seen this from our info push out. But just here are the remaining sessions. So this was a quick hitter. But we're actually going to go into essentially 3 pillars of the school mental health framework in Wisconsin. And so really a focus next time in this series on October 12th around an aspect of compassion resilience, essentially, right? So after that, want to really trying to think about trauma sensitive and how that might impact your policies. How do you, I think in general, how do you just, with all this, not waste the crisis? I mean, the crisis is here. I don't know what to say. Coronavirus, the COVID-19 is collective trauma, some people call it. Sometimes they call it a worldwide crisis. It's certainly at the very least a global pandemic that's making this biggest adaptive challenge I've seen in my 30 years of education right now. And so how do you make sure that while you're already unfreezing a lot of traditions, how do you refreeze it in some really productive ways? And that's what I think a lot of this is about. Like, how do you're already in systems change work just because of all the upheaval. So how do you make sure that when it comes back to refreezing, if you will, into the way we do things in our schools and systems, that they're systems that are even more resilient than ever, that they're more mentally healthy than ever, that we, for example, we have schools that are focused in trauma sensitive ways, if that's something that we think is a really key piece, et cetera. And that places as we go on are going to be areas where we have really strong social emotional learning in place, where people are really resilient, whether they're littles or bigs or all sorts of folks on the staff or not. So that's just what we're doing. And by the way, the TBD, that's a partnership DPI has with a national expert in anti-bullying. In fact, runs a national center on that. So that'll be the topic if you're curious. We just don't have the specific language yet, but if that's particularly of interest too, just know. And again, please register for these events if you haven't already, any that you might be interested. The dates are there. That's part of a larger series. And again, you will be able to find out more about any of that as we wrap up right now, our OSSA.org website. So again, if you just, let me just kind of go back to where this is so you can see how this is. Here's our website. As I go to the information resources tab, I just come down in the drop down to OSSA webinar information because this is a webinar. This is where Jenna, within the next 24 hours, will be posting the recording of this session if you want to share this with others or review it. It's also where you'll see more information about things like I just shared, our mental health series. All right, so hope that makes sense. I don't see any other chats or comments in the chat. So with that, I'm going to say thanks to all who were able to join us today. Thanks especially to our facilitators and partners and friends, Beth, Julie, and Liz. May God bless you all and just good work you're doing, and on Wisconsin. Thanks and be well, everyone.
Thanks, Joe.
Bye, all.